man. You cannot marry a woman without gills. You're from two different worlds. Oh, I've wasted my life.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. There are a couple of interesting threads that were going around on Twitter this week, and I wanted to talk about them. So my good friend Aaron Sparrow is joining me today. We're going to talk about this first one, and then later in the day, we're going to talk about another thread from, I don't know, comic book boob Dan Slott. But this one's more interesting. This is kind of the state of the comic book industry and a lot of what a lot of creators are experiencing right now. And here, obviously, to talk with me about that is comic book writer, comic book editor, the man behind the comic book version of Darkwing Duck himself, Aaron Sparrow. How you doing?
Can you call someone in comics a boob if they've never actually seen one? Oh, got him.
That's the irony.
Oh, man. I kid. Yeah, I'm doing great, Wes. How are you doing? It's fun to be back.
I'm doing great. Glad to have you on here. Obviously, yesterday we did our Comic Writing 101. Had a lot of fun. Decided to keep you around and record a couple of these videos. Now, this first one is from Lonnie Nadler. He's an independent comic writer. He does some really cool horror stuff. And he had this interesting tweet out. It's a two-parter. He says, "So many of my creator friends have expressed a desire to quit comics or find an alternate career recently. This is not a reflection of these individuals or their resolve, but rather of an industry that so rarely rewards hard work, artistry, and passion. The comics industry is ferocious, has been for decades. We need to find a way to better uplift those who pour their hearts into these books. As creators, publishers, readers, we must work toward building a space with more loyalty, more respect, and more honesty." That's pretty depressing that a lot of people that they have their dream job are ready to step away because they don't feel like they're being compensated, or maybe they're not able to support themselves just off comics anymore.
It's interesting because it's a statement that I both agree with on many levels, but also disagree with. I think that it has to be parsed out. If you're someone who's unhappy in comics, then maybe you never really loved them to begin with. Maybe it was just a job and you need to find another job. If you're not enjoying it, definitely move on. I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying to yourself, you know what, this is not working for me. I need to find something else. Even if you were, as a kid, you thought this was your dream to work in comic books. You decided that when you were 8. Well, how smart is an 8-year-old? You are an adult now. You may need to do something else. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think it's a good idea to be diversified anyway. Comics is a tough business. It's a tough business to make a living in. It's a tough business to work in and to feel creatively fulfilled, because even if you're doing your best work, that's not necessarily what's going to hit the page. You're going to have editorial interference. There's going to be a lot of factors that go into, your job satisfaction. So you may need to do something else, and you may need to have a day job, and there's nothing wrong with that. So if that's the choice that you have to make it, but I don't think that necessarily means that, it has to be as doom and gloom as this tweet kind of suggests.
Well, there's also a lot of kind of luck involved. Things are cyclical. Things, certain genres or story tropes or ideas get hot for a while and then they're not hot. You might miss the mark. You might have been the best writer, but you've missed it by 5 years, things of that nature. Plus, it has a lot to do with who you know. I think that probably is a lot of the frustration, is that there is a good old boy network that if you're not in, you're kind of out,
Yeah, you have to basically be friends with editors. And unfortunately, the way that it seems to work now is, in order to be on an editor's list or to be considered a friend of theirs, you have to dogmatically adhere to every political belief that they hold. It's become as much as the industry was kind of a good old boys network in the past, it's really become so now. There's all kinds of pitches that I've put in for things that, it's like it was fun to do, but I knew I wasn't going to get it because I'm not friends with the editor. And, the editor at the end of the day is going to hire, a lot of it's nepotism. They're going to hire their buddies, whether their buddies are talented enough to do it or not. Like I said, we've turned in pitches at places like IDW that I know would resonate with the fans and that would increase the readership of their books. But if you're an editor and you're just running on venture capital money, which IDW seems to be doing, they're losing money every quarter, vast amounts of money, yet somehow they're still going. You get one of those editors who their attitude is, it's not my money, so it doesn't matter. They can hire their friends. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the book's successful. They're going to keep their job. Their friends are going to keep getting that minuscule paycheck that they're paying them to do the creative. This is the problem with hiring people who are communists. You need to hire capitalists. You need to hire people who understand the importance of making money and things being successful. If and IDW, unfortunately, I think that they've got a lot. They've got a lot of people who are professed communists in their bios and who talk about socialism and how capitalism is evil on their Twitter all the time. Well,
That's probably 75% of the industry, Eric.
Yeah, in what world do you think those are the people that are going to make you money if you're a publisher?
It's crazy. You bring up some interesting points here, and it sounds like in a lot of places the business is kind of stagnant, stale. Maybe there's pay isn't keeping up with inflation. People are having a hard time making ends meet. We've seen that the readership is shrinking. The big two, followed by independent publishers, have changed some of their strategies regarding the market, who they want to appeal to, the types of stories that they're telling. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of political messaging. Let's be honest, a lot of propaganda kind of things in there. It's turned off people. People have left. Or maybe they've went out and found comic books in the back issue market. Maybe they went over to crowdfunding, things of that nature. So they've seen the numbers dwindle. The marketing strategies aren't working. They're not doing their friends any favors that are having to go out there and find new careers because they can't make ends meet anymore by continuing down this path. And instead of returning, to classic storytelling, tried and true methods for growing an audience, they refuse to admit any type of mistake and just continue to go along this path, even though it's diminishing the market and their opportunities to, raise a family.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. They double down on the things that are shrinking the market, and then they say, where's the money? Why can't we get by? Why is my work drying up? Why do I not have as many titles to write? Well, this is the result of what you've done to the industry. I hate to, God, I feel like I come on and we talk about these like negative things, but it's like these are things that need to be discussed because there is a way back, there is a path forward, but you have to want it. And eventually you're going to get to a point, maybe we're already there, I hope we're not, where the industry has just had so many people walk away that it's not salvageable. I railed a little bit on socialism and communism, but another problem is corporatism in the sense that once these comic companies got absorbed by these huge conglomerates that are publicly traded, it becomes an issue of you are supposed to have continual profits. The profits are always supposed to be going up, and otherwise the shareholders aren't happy. So in the case of like Marvel and DC, their readership is shrinking and their leadership is short-sighted. And so what they're doing is they're raising the price of the books. They're doing more variant covers. They're doubling down on all the things that are killing the industry. But it's got that nice short-term game that keeps their profits up. So on paper, it looks like, hey, look, we're doing better, even though the readership is getting to the point where it's not going to be sustainable. So it's short-term thinking versus long-term success, which is always a way to bury an industry.
There's another overlying problem here is you talk about, I think Mr. Nadler and other people will identify the symptoms. The symptoms are terrible. We have people having to move away, the readership's shrinking, but nobody wants to talk about the causality. What's the root problems? And they won't admit that a lot of their ideas and the forced issues that they want, what comics themselves to be are the problem. And that's why they're experiencing the symptoms. And they don't really want to admit their culpability in all this. It's a weird situation.
You chase an audience that doesn't exist, or at least that you have no ability to connect to and doesn't spend money on your product. You chase that audience at the expense of the audience that you had. Somebody who is smart in business is going to say, hey, we want a new market. We want to reach out to new markets. But what you want to do is you want to expand your market, not change your market. You don't want to say like, hey, all the Pepsi drinkers that we have right now, we want to get rid of them and get all these people that drink Coke to drink Pepsi. Well, no, you want to keep the people that are already drinking Pepsi and then bring in some of those people that are drinking Coke. I don't know how. great creative people, even when they are people that are really, really creative, but they don't have any business acumen and they don't have any customer service acumen. And whether or not you want to admit it, and a lot of people don't, if you are asking people to spend their hard-earned money on something that you have produced, whether you're a writer, you're an artist, whatever it is, you are in the customer service business. You are in the business of satisfying customers. If I'm going to come spend money on a comic book, I want that comic book to be good. I want to love it. That's why I'm investing my money in this product. And if I happen to run into you at a con or talk to you on Twitter, I would like you to be pleasant. That's just part of the gig.
You don't want to be insulted?
I don't want to be insulted. I don't want to be condescended to. And I certainly don't want to be lectured. Nobody likes to be lectured. These people that get on Twitter and that lecture all the time, I know an artist, her whole Twitter feed, is nothing but lectures and screeds. But if you ever told her she was wrong in person and started to delineate why, she'd just like clam up and have this like totally adverse reaction. Nobody likes being lectured. So why do you think that you are the person that gets to go out and do it? Do you think that I guess you think you're smarter than everybody else, but I think the first step towards wisdom is realizing you don't know every damn thing and doing more listening than you do talking. I say as I come on your channel to talk.
That's all, buddy. These are good conversations that I think that are worthwhile to kind of get some of these ideas out of here. Now, I don't think what Lonnie Nadler is saying here is like doom and gloom. If anything, it might be good. If there are people if there are too many creators, and they aren't putting butts in seats, and they don't have the will or the drive to get better and work, go through the lean times to get to the good times, it's probably time for them to move on. There are other places that they can apply their vocation, probably make some money, be creative, and not have to worry about the stresses. But having a leaner, creative set of creators with more drive that have, kind of grinded it out on the indie scene, it might be good for the industry. I don't know.
I'd like to see the industry return to the practice of merit-based hiring. Like, for example, you take a writer like Mariko Tamaki. And she came in and for whatever reason, she got put on some pretty high-profile stuff right out of the gate. Now, the way it used to work is she would come in, she'd have to kind of cut her teeth on some backup stories, some stories in some annuals, have editors work with her and kind of build her up to where, she honed her craft. And then when she, hit that level, she'd be put on like a big book, like Detective. That's not really the way it works. She kind of got put on big number ones, like right away. Her writing wasn't very good. And so they didn't do her any favors. Well, I don't want to say it wasn't really good, but it wasn't polished yet. It wasn't there. It wasn't ready for prime time. She needed more time in the oven, needed more time to work. She needed experienced editors who could help guide her and, kind of basically, get her to where she needed to be. Now, fortunately, I think she has gotten a lot better. I think that, she did kind of cut her teeth on those titles. But the problem is, when you're on those high-profile titles,
she has a reputation now.
Yeah, you have the reputation of not being very good. So now she has to kind of overcome that. Whereas many people would have discovered her for the first time if she kind of had her time in the background to work out all those problems. And then, when she hits the scene, it's like, oh, she's really good. Yeah, well, of course she is. She's had 5 years in where she's been, honing her craft. And
Doc and we said that they replaced climbing the ladder in comic books with a pegboard. But we decided that you're at the top and you don't have to earn your way up there. It's just where somebody decides they want to put you.
Yeah. And that's absolutely an apt comparison. The interesting thing is that, you've had this happen and you've had people walk away. And it's like, how do you get them back? And how do you repair those reputations? You haven't done anybody any favors. I understand the desire to say, like, hey, comics has been largely men for the longest time, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's something that interests men. So more men have gravitated to it. Well, now, there's more women coming in, more women would like to be a part of it. And, your LGBT creators and your minority creators, they have something to say and they want to write some stories, and that's great. And, we should be, welcoming them into the community, but we should still have people climbing the ladder. Unfortunately, the problem is you're always going to have some people who, through nepotism or just through, sheer malice are going to try to keep other people down. And that's the problem that needs to be mitigated. You don't just move people to the top. You have to eliminate the people that are blockading people from climbing that ladder.
You know what? The other thing that the fallout of this is, or one of the repercussions is when customers see it happen enough, where people are elevated before they're ready for it, and it appears, Marvel wants to, okay, they're purposely going out there and they're putting LGBTQ plus creators on certain titles because they want to elevate their careers and give them more opportunities, but they weren't ready for it. The next time that they elevate the next LGBTQ plus creator, there's an assumption after you've seen it enough that they didn't earn that spot, and therefore it's not going to be good to begin with. Why should I even waste my time on an issue when I've seen it enough that I know that they're not ready?
And that's the disservice that they're doing to an LGBT creator who is really good and who does deserve that spot and has the talent to take that number one. And maybe and it gets people not invested because they feel like they've seen this shell game so many times that they just assume now that it's all a shell game. And it's a huge disservice to those creators who deserve that spot. So that's why climbing the ladder is so important. That's why having editors who actually take the time, who first of all, who have the talent to develop people, and then take the time to do it.
You remember when Sean Gordon Murphy put that tweet out? I think it was about a year ago, saying, what I want from an editor, and one of his requirements was somebody that understands three-act story structure and that has a degree in writing. And I think it was Andy Corey, who was at DC Comics also at the same time. Was like, I don't have a degree in writing. I do just fine. Like, first guy they shit canned.
Yeah,
worst
the guy
who
destroyed Vertigo.
Yeah.
So and he was hired, because he was somebody who, I mean, I don't know. I can't really say why he was.
He was with Comics Alliance.
Yeah, I wasn't on the inside, but just from the outside looking in, so these are all opinion statements. So please take them that way. And if people have other facts that they want to contribute, I'm certainly willing to listen to them and change my opinion if you have facts that I don't have. So let me just get that out of the way. But from the outside, as we were talking, it looks like he just worked his way up through Comic Alliance. He bitched and complained enough about the company that they were like, well, look, we bring this guy on, it'll be a really good PR move. And then maybe if we do have these problems, he's the guy to solve it. Well, he didn't have any solutions. He only had bitching and complaining. And when he got into a position of power, he made all the wrong moves and alienated the fan base that probably would have, looked. Basically, it seemed like he was hiring out of spite. Who do my Twitter? What are my Twitter enemies going to hate? That's the line of books I'm going to do. And then it didn't turn out to be successful. And you had $1 million brand that just is now dead. It's gone.
They had 4 enormous controversies in the span of like 5 months as they were launching the 25th anniversary of Vertigo.
Yeah, you had
insanity.
A writer you hired a writer who drove somebody to suicide and seemed pleased about it. You had a sexual predator. You had and who even before being outed as a sexual predator, which apparently people knew about, but kept quiet because he had the right politics for them. He was writing a book that was inherently racist.
Yeah,
it's like these are the books that you put out, and then when no one to give you their money, you were surprised.
That was the launch book. That was the one that they said was their strongest one. That when you launch something, you put your best foot forward, and Border Town was their best foot forward. Complete incompetence.
And then all those creators that that had to come out afterwards and like disavow Esquivel. I think Eric Esquivel was the writer on that. They had to come out and it's like, did you guys know? It just makes everybody look bad because then the fans are like, did you know? And did you just cover up for him? Because we've seen people who were politically aligned cover up for each other before. Please just try to be consistent. If you believe that we need to get sexism out of the industry, don't hide the people that are sexist just because they're on your political team. Can we just have some consistency of morality, please?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think that is probably one of the biggest issues, like I mentioned earlier, is a lot of these creators want to kind of point out the symptoms and how it doesn't work for them, but they don't want to understand their place potentially in the problem or where these problems are coming from and address that. They just want to kind of want the things that are affecting them addressed rather than the things that are affecting everybody. And I think until the big two and the indie publishers are willing to admit they've made some mistakes and it's time to take a different path, you're going to have a lot more people that are going to have to go and find alternate careers, potentially just leave comic books for good, or have a hard time making it right now?
I would love to see comics return to the way that I always hired as an editor, which was, I ended up with teams on my books when I was hiring for the Disney titles at Boom that were incredibly diverse. And I didn't set out to do that. I basically approached everything, everything would come into me through emails. So I had, and this was before social media was as huge as it is today. So I had no idea what people's political affiliations were. I had no idea what their sexualities were, what their race was, none of that. They would send me pitches. And if I liked it, I would submit them. And if Disney accepted them, then they would have work. Or they would send me, samples of their coloring or their lettering. And I ended up with incredibly diverse teams just naturally through merit because, in the words of the Macho Man, the cream rises to the top. You're going to get that. You're going to get that naturally. So this kind of like, I understand wanting to diversify and to, make the industry more representative of the country. I absolutely do. I think that's important. But I think that, the top criteria still has to be merit. You still have to be ready for prime time. My like I said, my team on Darkwing, incredibly diverse. We, our assistant editor is a person with a disability. Darren Bennett, who was our letterer, and later he moved on, but like his company was still, he's still hiring letterers for us. He and our colorist Andrew Dalhouse, both Black. We and that just our designer Erica Chiriquez, Hispanic. All just naturally based on talent. Who would have thought?
Absolutely. So, Aaron, interesting stuff that Lonnie's pointing out here. Like I mentioned earlier, we are going to talk a little bit later today about the day and slot tweets. Certainly more salacious than this. Do you have any final words just to talk about people having to go outside the industry and maybe like losing their love because there isn't enough money to go around right now?
Yeah, I hope that people don't lose their love for it. I mean, we'll lose some people who were trying to use it as a stepping stone, maybe to Hollywood and whatnot. The people that don't really love it will fall away. The people that do love the industry, I think, will find a way to continue to ply their craft, even if they can't do it full time. We're seeing people get out into crowdfunding and do some really successful campaigns. Indie stuff seems to be on the rise. Even at companies like Boom and things like that, they seem to be doing really well with crowdfunding. I think we're just moving towards a more direct to consumer model, and I think it's because the publishing industry itself, from comics all the way up to novels and things like that, it's just become so incestuous and so politically motivated, and that it's kind of choking itself off for not only from its readers but just from creativity in general. So I think that you're going to see kind of a revolution. I think you're going to see comics become like the punk scene for a while. You're going to have people that are going to break out of the mainstream and are going to do their own thing and aren't going to care what society thinks of them or what the Twitter nags have to say about it. And they're going to do some really fun, really innovative stuff. At least that's my hope, because I'd like to see the industry thrive and be healthy. And I'd like to see people able to make a living doing what they love by creating stories.